Hi, this video is for programming exercise 3. It's a tutorial on creating a tic-tac-toe game in React. Once we did that, then we had a series of questions we needed to cover. Go and get started. Question 1 is, what is the relationship between square, board, and game? So this is the components tree of the tic-tac-toe board itself. And then we can also view basically the matching DOM for that. So game is the container, essentially. It's the div that holds the entire entity of the board and the game itself. So you have game, and then within that there is board, and then within that is square. And we can just see that on the tree a little bit easier. It's a little bit less complicated to look at and see that. Number 2, passing of props in React is information flow from parent to child. Explain how this is true of value prop and what does it mean in React to be a parent component. So parent component seems to receive all the information like in the other program we're working on, the Uno one, whether it's from a JSON or in this case it's carrying along the state values of squares and x is next boolean. Squares tracks basically the array of the squares, and then x is next is boolean that tracks whether or not x is next, whether it's true or false. It's pretty straightforward on that one. 3, there's 5 points to this, so no, that ain't the right one. Let's see. Well, anyway, I'll just get right into it. 3a is how how should a constructor deal with props? Constructor needs to pass props as a parameter, and then a super call of props needs to be made, followed by this dot props. So in this situation here, like in board, you write constructor with props inside, and we use super props, and then this dot state, and in this case is what we're doing, and then we would fill in with the values. It was the only instance there. Yes. B, what should not be inside a constructor? What should the constructor do instead? Tutorial is saying set state should never be within a constructor. You should use this dot state and provide values instead. Should state have properties set from props. According to the tutorial, they said no, because you lose the ability to run set state later. What does the article say about constructors and subscriptions to APIs? Essentially, it says not to do it, and to use component did mount function instead. Last part of question 3 is when are constructors not needed? If you're not planning on maintaining state in your component and aren't binding any event listener handlers, then you don't need to define a constructor at all. If you don't need to, if you don't need state or event handlers, then probably don't need like a class-based component at all. You can just go ahead and write a function instead, because they're a lot easier to write and handle and deal with. Question 4, if you haven't installed React, we already did that. Dunzo, looking at it right now. Number 5, after completing the tutorial, how does the board know when a square has been clicked? So essentially, each one of these squares has a button. So like once I click a button, we can see that the props value now has changed to X for that particular one. And then we can see that same information here on the state for board, that square 0 as an X. You can continue on. You see that changes. So what's basically happening at this point is when we're clicking a square, function square is actually returning a button, right? And it's the individual buttons we see here. Yeah, these guys. And on click, it is doing this props on click and then props value. So props on click down in render square is what is actually going on. So render square essentially passes the on click as this dot handle click, which handle click then passes the parameter I, creates a slice into the array, checks to see if there's a winner or if all the squares are full. If it is, then it's going to go ahead and ignore the click. If there is no winner and there are squares available to play, then it'll go ahead and allow you to run that square, and it will go ahead and check this dot state is next. It'll check it and then determine whether an X or an O goes in place, and go ahead. It'll set that parameter I to either X or O, depending on whether the Boolean is true or false. And then it handles setting the state of squares to squares, whether it's whatever it is, depending on the click, and then is next depending on the click. It'll change that value as well. Let's see. Number 6, consider line of code. That would be well, let's bring this over. So we're considering this line of code here. So the question itself is, how does the parameter I get passed to handle click? It's being passed to handle click because it was in render square, and then render square is passing that on to handle click. Number 7, explain each line of code in handle click method. So first line, which is handle click itself. It's calls it the method of handle click and then puts I as a parameter. The second line sets a constant squares to this dot state dot squares dot slice and into the given array of the square that was selected. Line 3 is the if statement, checking to see if there's a winner or if the square if the square is null or not. If the square is full or there is a winner, then it just returns and doesn't allow the click to affect anything. If there's not, it'll pass through. Returns that. Then we have this line on 27, which sets the squares with the value, so squares I with the value of either X or O, depending on the outcome of this Boolean. Let's see, 7, this line, line 28, this dot set state calls the set state function in order for us to set the values. So we're setting property of squares and is next, and then it ends. It's over for that one. Next question is: square component is changed to a function. Why is this possible? Essentially, it's because the board is keeping track of its state. Since square is no longer needing to keep track of state, it can become a function at that point. It'd be a much simpler item to be. Number 9. Why does tutorial assert that mutability is important? Basically makes complex features easier to implement. Actually detecting changes in immutable objects is way easier. And then main benefit is immutability is that it helps you build pure components in React. Immutability also doesn't allow you to mutate the original component itself, which is, I guess, the pure portion of what they're referring to. Number 10, component square was turned into a function component when its state was lifted to board. Can board be turned to a function component? I'm going to say no, because it is handling the state of another function, and there wouldn't be necessarily another component to handle the state of square, and then I guess it would also be handling the state of board. It just would get overly complicated too, so there wouldn't be really a need, in my opinion. But yeah, that's basically it. So you get a winner. So code functions perfectly fine. My dev tools allow me to see all the elements, within the DOM itself, and actually it updates the value of what's inside the button when we click. I mean, we can see that this button here never had a value. It's still blank, which is pretty cool, that this is how that works. And then updates with WinRO. And then just seeing this really simply put with the hierarchy based on a tree also helps the understanding of how this all works, and then being able to see props and state definitely makes it easier to deal with, in terms of seeing information and ensuring that the information you're looking for is actually being passed, and then it's actually there. But that's going to do it for now. Until next time, hooey ho!